Hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to step-by-step make a mask that fits great, that's great for your skin. It's eco-friendly, 100% biodegradable, because all of the products used to make this mask today are natural products that are able to biodegrade. And I'm so excited to share this with you because I think it's a very important issue that we collectively as the world need to consider. I did a video on this. I'm going to plug that in for you. But if you're interested in making this, maybe you have some skin sensitivities. There's so many issues with variable fabrics that you use. And I'm so proud to bring this design to you that's 100% organic, safe for you, for your skin. And I'm going to get right to it. Hello. If you're new, my name is Takacs and I'm the Grainline seamstress. This channel is all about saving you time, money, and energy with tips and tricks that I learned in the sewing factory from when I was a swimsuit designer and I had a sewing factory where we manufactured and sold swimwear worldwide. If you're down for that, make sure to subscribe, ring the notification bell. It'll let you know when I post a new video, and keep in mind that it is free. So without further ado, I want to get right into this. I'm going to model this mask for you really quick so that you can see what it looks like on. We're going to talk a little bit about it, and then we're going to have a sewing tutorial on how to make this unique mask. So I'm going to show you how to make this organic pleated surgical mask today, and this is a replica of the polypropylene mask that people wear that are one and done and they throw it away. And you would think it would be easy to find a pattern, but it wasn't. So I went ahead and I made a pattern for you. There's two different styles on this mask, and today we're going to make this one, the hybrid. It has a removable nose wire with a nose wire pocket. I'm going to show you how to do that. We are not using elastic. We are making organic ties that are nice and soft and comfy. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And I'm also going to show you how to add this lanyard so that you can wear it around your neck when you do not need to wear the mask. You can keep it close to your body and safe so that you don't lose your mask and have to go buy one of those plastic ones, right? We don't want to do that. So I'm going to model it for you on so that you can see what it looks like on. And if during this tutorial, if you have any questions for me, please leave them in the comments below. I promise to answer all questions and comments below and help you through this process of learning how to make this mask. And we're going to hack those pleats. I'm going to show you how to do that in 30 seconds, like that. This is what the pattern looks like when you get it from the Streamline Seamstress. It has the templates, it has instructions, it has hyperlinks and a PDF file for you to find the products that I use with detailed written instructions for you, and then you can always refer back to this video. But I have transferred the template to these plastic kitchen mats that I found that I absolutely love. They have a nice grit to them, and when they're on the fabric, they do not move. You can move the fabric, but the template doesn't move, and I love that element. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's cut this hybrid organic mask so I can show you what this looks like. We will not be using this piece, the nose bridge panel, so I'm going to set that aside for the second video. We're just going to utilize these two pieces to cut today. I have a rotary wheel and mat and ruler, and this is the organic hemp jersey, and the greater stretch is going this direction and the shorter stretch is going this direction. We always want to cut our ties, and that's what I'm going to cut for you right now, going with the greater stretch, and that is likely to be from selvage to selvage. You can see most jerseys or knits, they roll on the selvaged edge, and you can clearly see where the looping ends on that. And I am just going to cut a nice clean edge to start so that I have a smooth cut, and then I'm going to line it up on the mat, and I'm going to cut about 5/8 of an inch, ½ inch, depends on the body of the fabric. This fabric's a little thicker, and so I'm going to cut it a little bit more narrow. And I'm using the ruler. I'm right-handed, and I'm pushing down to keep everything in place and cutting those strings. I've cut two pieces, from selvage to selvage, which I believe the fabric is 60 inches wide. And now all I have to do is just pull. And when I pull, it makes this gorgeous elastic string just naturally. When it's cut in the proper direction with the greater stretch, any jersey, spandex, lycra knit will do this. It will curl and it will stay curled. And if it becomes uncurled, you can just tug on it and it will curl right back up, and it makes this beautiful, gorgeous string. And this is what we're going to use for the ear loops and for the neck lanyard. And if you're doing any kind of masks and you're doing the loops behind the head, or a one strap connection behind the head, this works as well. So I'm going to set that aside and let's cut the next piece. So this is the template for the main mask body, and I'm going to cut one out of the hybrid, the keepsake cotton that I got from Joann's, and I'm going to cut the internal out of an 80-20 organic hemp blend, and the links for these are below. But I want to talk to you about grain line on this, because I think this is a very important part of cutting properly that a lot of people overlook, or just they're not informed. So whenever we're making anything that goes across the body, we want to make sure that we're cutting it with the cross grain, and the natural grain line is going to go the length of the body of any garment that you're making. And in this case, because we're wearing this across our nose, across our face, we want to make sure that the cross grain is going the width of the pattern template. And this is just a scrap piece of this fabric. This fabric comes 120 inches wide, which is such a great value, but you can't really tell which is the grain line and which is the cross grain, but I can tell by the stretch, because there's a little bit of stretch on a woven with the cross grain, and there's little to no stretch on the grain line. So in this case scenario, let's see, I got no stretch going this way. That's telling me that's the grain line, but I have a little bit of stretch going this direction, and that's telling me this is the cross grain. And my serge seam also indicates that, because I serged my raw edges on the width of my fabric. And just to review that again, usually the grain line goes the length of the fabric, and the cross grain is going the width, or from selvage to selvage, and we'll talk about what that is in the next cut. I'm going to cut this for you just all the way around. I've got my heavy industrial weights. I also sometimes use a jar of pennies, but I'm going to cut that and set that to the side, and then we'll do the next piece. And as you can see, I've just cut my panel, and that's going to be the internal part of the mask. And then here we are with the, now I've washed this as soon as it came in, because we always want to do that with our fabrics to ensure there's no shrinkage and to get out all those nasty elements that they use when they dye fabric. So the selvage is the end of the width of the fabric, or the end of the weave of the fabric. So whenever you see this writing or you see this fringing, you know that that's the selvage edge. And the selvage, the cross grain, usually the cross grain will run from selvage to selvage. So I know my cross grain is going this way and my grain line is going this way. And to confirm that, I can tell when I pull this way, absolutely no stretch whatsoever. And when I pull it this way, I can see just a little bit of a stretch there. And that is my indication that I want to cut this pattern this way with the cross grain. I do not want to cut it this way. And I think this is the reason why a lot of people make masks and then they put them on and they're like, it's not fitting properly. And it's usually because it's cut improperly. And that's the very basic beginning of sewing that everyone needs to know. So I'm going to cut this for you, and then we're going to cut one additional piece that we need. So there's one more small piece that we're going to cut, either one on the fold or cut two separately. We need actually both. And we also want to make sure to cut that with the cross grain because we need that stretch, and that's another important element of this. We're going to make hem tape, and this is 2 inches wide, so I'm just going to cut a strip 2 inches wide and allocate it for the parts of the mask that I need on the side, across here, and then on the side here. So you can use the pattern template, which you would cut 2 and then also cut 1 on the fold, but in order to, I guess, kind of hack this, for lack of a better term, I'm just going to cut 1 piece, the grain going with the cross grain, 2 inches. I'm going to use my acrylic ruler and my mat to do that. I'm going to make sure everything is lined up. I might want to give myself a nice clean cut, straight edge to work with before I cut. So I know that I have a nice beautiful straight edge there. And I'm using my acrylic ruler. I've got the line at 2 inches, and then I'm lining it up here to make sure that we have a nice straight finish. And just cutting that, and that's going to be the equivalent of my 1 on the fold, and then also the extra that I need for the sides. This is going to be much easier to make in hem tape in 1 strip than it is cut into smaller pieces. So we put the template in there for everyone to know what size it needs to be as a point of reference, but it's much easier to just cut your 2-inch strip, and the equivalent would be probably about 20 inches is more than you need. Right now I'm going to take this tool and this and my front, my external and internal fabrics, and I'm going to go to the pressing mat, and we're going to show you how to make hem tape and how to prep this to sew. So I have my wool pressing mat, and I am just going to give everything a nice, it's cotton, so I can go high on my iron. I think my iron is still warming up. There we go. I'm going to give everything a nice press. And the first thing I want to do is press this in half so that I can mark my halfway point. So I'm going to press that in half, maybe a little shot of steam. And then I'm going to, I've got a nice crease there. I can see the halfway point on the mask, on the length, and I'm going to do the same thing on the width. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So to make the hem tape, we have a bias tape maker, and this is hem tape, not bias tape, because bias tape would have to be cut on the bias, and that's a completely different video. So I'm going to show you how to make hem tape today. And the first part of this is we're just going to slip the strip that we cut right into the bias tape maker. And there's some tools that you can use that will help you get that through. I normally don't see it to be a problem. I'm going to turn this way so that you can see as I'm pressing. But what it does, the bias tape maker, is it folds down either side and it starts to create this 1-inch tape for you. And I'm going to use my iron to press everything in place as I go. And I'm just pushing that forward with my hand, and you can see it's making that beautiful 1-inch tape. I'm trying to go easy on the steam so it doesn't fog the lens on the camera. Multitasking, seamstress, camera person. And this is so much easier to do this in one strip than to cut smaller pieces, just an FYI, especially if you're making more than one mask. I'm going to take this 1-inch tape and I'm going to make 1/2-inch hem tape. And you can use a hot ruler for this, but you do not need to. You can do it manually. But if you're new and you're a little apprehensive, this is a great tool. And I'm just going to hit it just short. You can see on here the measurements. I'm just going to hit it just a little bit short of a 1/2 inch because I want the hem tape underneath to be just a little bit, just a tad bigger than the hem tape layer on the top, so that when I sew and my needle, I'm going to sew on the narrow side, when my needle goes through, it's going to catch the bottom of the hem tape. They're almost the same. They're just a little micro tad, 1/8 of an inch off. And hot rollers are great because you can press on them. It's exactly what they're designed for. This one, I believe, is by Clover. Hot rollers are great because you can see the lines here, and you can see that that is where we want to be at a 1/2 inch, and you can see that I'm just coming up just a little bit short of that, and I'm going to use my pointer to help me so I don't get my fingers too close to that very hot iron that we have it hot enough for cottons. And I'm just going to continue on this journey. And when I take that out, you can see it's created that crease for us where we can just later, we're going to be able to just sleeve our mask right in there and create our removable nose wire pocket. If you do not have a hot ruler, you can just give it a fold and just use your fingers. You could use a bamboo pointer and just give it just a little pull as you're folding it. That would normally be how I would do it, but I've made hem tape for 100 years, it seems like, so it's just natural for me. But this is a handy tool if you're new to making it and you want something that is going to help you in the process. Just make sure that you have something that can be a safe, no burn finger for you, like the pointer. I know they have some plastic finger protectors that you can use as well. Okay, so we are going to make this first pleated mask, and I am using a 80/20, the 80/20 organic hemp sheeting for the lining, and a Joanne keepsake print that I found very, very spring, summery, just made me smile. And I'm going to show you how to make this pretty darn quick. I'm going to sew at 3/8 of an inch. I've got a Microtex needle in the machine, and I like Microtex needles. They use them a lot in quilting. They are for precision seams. And I find, regardless of the fabric that I'm working with, the woven, that they just perform extremely well. And so that's the bottom seam, and I did 3/8 of an inch. I'm doing about 12 stitches per inch, and I am going to use my pinking shears. I'm just going to give that just a little trim close to the seam to clean away any of the bulk and to keep the fabric from fraying. I'm going to take this to the pressing table, and I'm going to give it a good press, pressing those seams open, and then prepping for the top hem where we're going to put the removable nose wire. I wanted to do a top stitch across the top to secure it, I could. It's not necessary, but now we are definitely going to work on sewing in the nose wire. And I'm going to mark my center by folding this in half and pressing. And I can clearly see my center on both sides. And I'm going to take a pin and mark that with a pin so that I can see it clearly. So I have marked my center. I pressed the bottom seam, so we're good to go there. And I have marked the center, which I had already pressed and folded. And then 1 7/8 inch from the center seam, I'm going to put a pin. And you can mark it with a pen if you prefer. And you don't have to worry about any holes because that's going to be covered with the hem tape. And at a 1/2 inch from that pin, I'm going to put another pin. So right about there. I am going to take this hem tape that we made. I'm going to take the hem tape that we made at the sewing table at the on the ironing board, and I'm going to take the side that is smaller facing up towards me, towards the ceiling, and the bigger side on the bottom, and I am going to just guesstimate. Here I go, I'm guesstimating what I need to go across there, and I can just trim a little bit off with my pinking shears. I don't have to work with the whole piece of tape. But what I'm going to do, the goal here is to open this up and just sew a few stitches, right over between those pins just to secure this down with the back of it open. So it'll make sense to you in a minute. So I'm getting ready. I put everything in place. I'm going to put the needle down just to hold my fabric in place. And this internal, where both panels meet, I'm making sure is lining up with my mask perfectly. And I'm just going to sew probably about 5 or 6 stitches. And you can even do this manually if you wanted to, if you wanted to be very careful, or if you have a machine where you can set the machine on slow, I would recommend that. And there's really no need to back tack. We just want to just kind of tack that down. So I just wanted to show you that really quick. It's just a few stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I came over a little bit, and that's fine. And now I'm going to remove those pins, and I'm going to just hold on to those. And now we're going to sew that tape in like we normally would any hem or bias tape. And when we get to these stitches, we're just going to skip over them and then start again. And what that's going to do, it's going to create a little pocket on the inside. So let me show you how to do that. When you're sewing hem tape, it's like putting paperwork in an envelope. You're just sleeving it in there. And keep in mind, if you're making your own hem tape or bias tape, which bias tape is a little different, but if you're making your own hem tape with a bias tape maker, it's so helpful if you make one side just a little bit bigger than the other. And I can see the stitches. I've sewn right up to them. I'm going to lift my needle, I'm going to lift my presser foot, and I'm going to come over, and I am going to just completely skip where those stitches are, and I've sewn before. And I'm just going to back tack 1 or 2 stitches and completely sleeve my mask. Nice and smooth. Everything's looking good. I'm using my presser foot for my seam allowance so that I have a nice seam allowance. I'm also using the inside of my presser foot and making sure that this fabric edge is just lining up beautifully. So I have a nice straight seam. Back tack at the end, and voila, there it is. And once I trim the threads on this side, the magic of this is it looks completely finished on the outside, and it has a little pocket where you can, it'll be easier with my pointer I think, where you're going to be able to just slip your nose wire in there. But from this side, it looks completely finished. And that's the whole point of doing those stitches, is to give it a nice, clean, finished look. And now we're going to take this to the pressing mat and press those pleats and pin them. And I'm going to show you how to do that in 30 seconds. I have my Black & Decker retro iron that I love. And okay, so this is super easy. We are going to take the fabric and we're going to fold it in half and press. And I am not using steam because I do not want to steam up the camera lens. And then I'm going to take the bottom and I am going to press it towards center and get a nice press. And the great thing about this is it works with any size pattern, adult, extra large, plus, child, small, regardless of the pattern that you're working with. This formula works, and the goal is to create your accordion, the 3 pleats that you see here. Make sure that you can see that pleat in the middle, or that pressed seam, pressed, so you can see all 3. And what I'm going to do is, this is really super easy. I'm first going to turn off my iron so I don't burn myself. So we have the pleated mask. I'm ready to do these pleats. I have the 3 presses that I did, and they're in thirds, one at the halfway point, and then halfway between the bottom and halfway between the top, creating 3 distinct presses. And I am going to first just take that first press and I am going to fold it until the halfway point of the bottom of the mask and give it a pin. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the middle press, and I'm going to go halfway, and I'm going to make sure that they're not overlapping here, that they're just touching each other but not overlapping. So I'm going to go from that center press halfway, and that should just meet up with the next pleat, and pin. And finally, the last one on this side, same thing. I can see where that fold is from pressing, and I'm going to take that, and you can see, and hopefully the camera, is going to focus for you, where you can see they're not overlapping each other. They're just folded right next to each other. I have a video on this, and this is one of the first videos I did. I was a really bad cameraman when I did my first video, and so it was hard for people to see what I was doing, and hopefully I'm doing a better job at this point. The next part is to do the opposite side, and the one thing that you want to make sure of is that the pleats are going in the same direction. You don't want to go this way with your creased fold, because that would be opposite of the direction of the pleat. You want to take that crease fold and you want to go in the same direction, and I'm going towards the bottom of the mask, and I'm eyeballing it because that crease tells me exactly where that pleat should be. And I'm doing the same thing here. I'm going to take that crease and I'm going to go halfway to where that is. That's my halfway. I'm just eyeballing it. I'm guessing it, and I'm just making sure that they're not overlapping each other. You can see I'm not bringing that over where it's on top of it. I'm just bringing it to where it's right next to it. And a pin. And then the same thing here. And I know that people like those magic clips. I am, in this scenario, I think pinning is much more functional than the clips, and I find the clips to be bulky. And the old wives' tale about pinning a woven fabric compromising the integrity of the mask is just that. It's an old wives' tale, because woven is meant to retain to its shape once pinned or sewn. So there you go. You can see all three there, hopefully in the camera, like a stair step there. None of them are overlapping on each other or touching each other. And if I want to test this and see how well that turned out, I would fold the mask in half and then just kind of eyeball it and be like, yeah, they're exactly the same. The pleats are going in the same direction. And now all I need to do is just baste either side before I'm going to sew in the casing that will enclose the jersey ties into the mask. And so I'm going to do a quick stitch just to baste. You can maybe enlarge the size of your stitch here if you want to. My goal is to just remove the pins. I just want to make sure to baste, no back tack needed, anything like that. It would be instinct to just turn this around and sew this way, but that could be a little problematic for you depending on the machine and the presser foot that you're using, because it's likely that your pleats might get caught on your presser foot like this and cause you some jamming. So my suggestion to you is just fold the mask in half and always sew the direction of the pleats if you possibly can, because it's like gravity. You're sewing the direction that the pleats are laying, which is going to be less problematic for you than if you were sewing in a different direction. So I've cut two pieces of the hem tape that we made, and I've cut them just a little bit wider than the mask so that when we tuck and fold, it's going to be a nice smooth finish. And I've cut two pieces, and now I'm going to show you how to sew those in. The first thing we want to do is determine the smaller of the two sides, and I can clearly see that this is the smaller of the two sides, and so I would want the smaller side on this side, the outside of the fabric, because that is where I'm going to top stitch. So that's going to bring me to the inside, and that is where I am going to want to ditch sew this. And what I mean by that is I'm going to just line up the fabrics. This is the wider side of the hem tape, and I'm going to match it, and I'm going to sew in the ditch where that crease is, or right next to that crease, and I'm just going to make sure to line up that I have a allowance to fold on the top and the bottom. I'm going to pin that for you really quick. I did pin this down here and here so it doesn't continue to roll up on me, and so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. I think my stitch, I need to bring it down a little bit, but I'm going to stitch as close to that as I can, making sure that everything is lining up on this side. So I'm going to start it a little far in. I'm going to start right where the mask begins, and that is right here. I'm going to put my needle down, get everything lined up, and I'm just going to sew. I can do a back tack here to hold, absolutely, and I'm going to just sew as close to the ditch as I possibly can, which if you're sewing it properly is probably 3/8 of an inch. And it's going to curve a little bit because we did those pleats, so I want you to be mindful of that. You want the fabric to line up, and here it's going to curve in a little bit, and I'm just using my pointer just to get everything in place. It doesn't have to be exact, we just want it to be close. And so what the idea here is, that's going to just fold in beautifully. I'm going to do the other side. So now we are going to get the jersey ties, and we are going to sew those in. The first thing I'm going to do before we even go there, we want to trim this excess bulk. We do not need that fabric in there, so I'm going to use my pinking shears. I'm going to go really deep into the pinking shears because it's a little bit thick, and I'm going to trim close to that seam where I sewed the ditch, and just get that excess fabric out. I don't need it, I don't want it, it's just creating extra bulk that will keep the mask from fitting as beautifully as we would like it to. So this is a 12-inch mat that I have here, and I'm going to cut my ties for the ear loops at 10 to be generous, because we're going to sew these closed. We're not going to knot them closed. And this is the ties that we cut out of a jersey hemp, and I cut them at 5/8 of an inch because I found that to be really good for this fabric. You can cut it anywhere between 5/8 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch wide. And then I also have a piece here that is about 24 inches that I'm going to use to make the lanyard as well. And I just wanted to show that to you. Same thing, cut with the greater stretch. We demoed that earlier. If we did not, I have a video on that I'll pop in for you. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to lay the ties into the mask. And I'm laying it the good sides out, and I am going to open this up and fold, and then I'm just going to lay my tie right in there and pin. And because we removed that excess bulk, it should be rather easy for you. Just a pin close about halfway, and this is our top stitch. This is our more narrow side. Remember, we wanted the hem tape to be, so it should be wider on the other side, so when we stitch this it should automatically catch for us on the opposite side. And it's a little tricky there. You could tack that down if you want, but I think if you pin it well, you shouldn't have any issues. And I'm going to fold and then fold. And that's going to put that jersey tie just super right in there. Bent needle. And don't you love this fabric? I fell in love with this fabric. I think it's beautiful for Easter and summer. And there you go. And so what we're going to do is just sew it 3/8 of an inch, back tack, and I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side, and then I'm going to show you how to enclose the ties. Okay, so I am going to now sew this casing closed, and I'm going to let all of you know whenever you have something a little thick, and I think this was also problematic for people that were sewing pleated face masks with any type of enclosure. Sometimes when the fabric's a little thick, it'll give you trouble. So your solution for that is to come in a little further than the exact edge of the fabric. As you can see, I've come in just a few inches. I'm working with, my Stellar Microtex needle, which I know is going to go through anything. And then if I need to, I can also adjust my presser foot and give me a little more leverage by helping those feed dogs grab the fabric. But that being said, I'm going to do a stitch, and then I'm going to return to do my back tack and then come forward. And as you can see, even though it was thick, it didn't give me any trouble. And I'm going to remove these pins as I go just to make sure they do not give me any trouble, because it is a little bit thicker. And same thing here. I'm using my pointer in lieu of my finger, and that is a good thing. If you've ever sewn, knock on wood, I have never sewn the needle through my finger, but I have seen it in the sewing factory, and it is not pretty. And voila, that should be fully encased, and because it's wider on the bottom, we caught it, it's perfect. You can reinforce it if you like. And now I'm going to do the other side. Same principle. I'm going to come in probably to where the red pin is, and that's going to be my starting point. It's just a little tip just to help you when you're sewing something that's a little thicker than normal. You don't want to change your needle. You can change your presser foot if you need to, but it's just a really great way to get it started. And now I back up. And now it's going to pick up and go straight forward for me. That just enclosed the ties into the mask. going to explain this next step to you by using a 2-inch strip of cotton. And this is how we're going to connect the loops together for the jersey ties. I'm going to take both right sides of the fabric together and we are going to crisscross them. And this is called sewing on a diagonal. Both right sides together. And I'm going to just put a pin in there. And my goal is to sew from this corner over to this corner in just a straight line. And if you want to, you could mark that with a marking pen of some sort or tailor's chalk. But I visually just see that. And what we're doing here is we're taking two ends and creating one complete circle of fabric, but we are doing so without adding any extra bulk. I'm going to back tack. And I'm going to pull that away for you. I'm going to get rid of the pins really fast. And what you can see is that creates a line. And it creates a complete line. Now, of course, with this cotton, I would trim it and cut those tails off. But essentially, that's what sewing on the diagonal is. Right sides together, creating a crisscross, and then sewing on a diagonal. Back tack here, and what that will do is create a beautiful straight line. And that's what we're going to do with the jersey ties, except for it's very tiny and very small, and I wasn't sure that the camera would communicate that well to you. So I wanted to show you how that's going to work, and now we're going to make it. Perfect. And I did do a front and back tack on that. And now I'm going to do the other side. Now, of course, that jersey tie is going to curl a little bit, right? Because we told it to when we pulled it tight. So I'm just going to use my pointer. And I'm going to sew straight across on the diagonal. Back tacking. Just to make sure that I caught it. I'm going to remove my pins. And I'm going to take my 30-year-old Ginger shears that I love. How about that? 30 years. That's a long time for a pair of scissors to last, right? And that's because I hide them, keep them locked up, so they don't get abused by my husband for things that they shouldn't be used for. So now I'm just trimming off those tabs, just like I would trim the excess off on that bigger piece of cotton that I showed you earlier. Now I just pull, and I'm just going to pull those tails right in, tuck everything in so you do not even see it. If I want to, I can take a pin and pin it, and I'm just going to tack that down just a few stitches. And this is going to be on the inside of the mask, so I'm not worried about if it looks pretty. Just a few, just to hold it in place. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I have trimmed the tails, the excess off the sides. You just got these little pointy tails that are just kind of in the way and bulky, and I don't need them. And I'm just going to take that and I'm just going to pull it. And as I pull it, I could open up that seam if I wanted to on the inside, and I'm just going to work it so that those ties, and I know my fingers are probably in the way, and for that I'm sorry. Maybe that helps. And then I'm going to take a pin. And again, this is going to be on the inside of the mask, so it does not need to be perfect. All we're doing is securing everything in place so that it's not going to move, tear, or break on us. So that we have a good quality tie that is so much more comfortable than elastic. I have not used elastic on masks since this began. Can you believe that? No one believes that. They're like, you never used elastic? I never used elastic on one single mask, and I am really proud of that, because elastic You know, it's just not comfortable, it's not biodegradable, it's hard to get a one size fits all, where this is very adjustable. And now I'm just going to turn what we've sewn into the casing, and it's invisible now. And now we just have these gorgeous, soft jersey ties. And I cut these ties at 10 inches because I'm going to fold my nose wire here, because we wanted that extra room to overlap, to be able to do that crisscross diagonal stitch. And now we're going to put the pony beads on, which is going to eat up a little bit as well to make the perfect mask. And this is one of my favorite tools. This is a Dritz loop turner, and it's like a fishing hook. It has this hook on the end and then this little clip here where you can close something and then just pull it through. I use it for adding pony beads or elastic to a casing. I don't often make a casing in elastic, or even pulling the ties through a casing, but it comes in very handy. It's much easier to use than a safety pin. So right now I'm going to pick a few of these pony beads that I purchased on Amazon, and the link will be below. And I'm looking for one that has pretty decent hole size in them. They're 9mm, but they vary. They're not all the same. And then I'm just going to grab my tie with the hook. I'm going to make sure that the camera is catching that for you. And I'm just going to pull that right through. Now I might have to let go of the hook once I get on the other side, so I don't end up tearing the fabric, but then just pull to give it some shape, and there you go. You have a wooden pony bead that you don't have to worry about it being biodegradable. And same thing on the other side. I'm going to look for one. Sometimes they just need, like, they're a little raw on the inside. I don't know if you can see that or not. Sometimes they just need like a little help. I take my turner and just kind of get out all of the raw edges from being drilled. But I really do like these wooden pony beads. And same thing, I'm just going to hook on just a piece of the fabric, not the whole amount, but about half of it. I can open it up if I want to. I'm just going to hook that fabric on there. Sometimes it's easier not to close this, but in this case I am, and that just really gently, I'm just going to pull that through, and voila. And if your jersey tie opens up on the other side, then just pull it. It'll go right back into shape. That's one of the things that we love about the jersey ties. That's another thing, that the hemp has more tensile strength, so it's going to retain its shape and return to shape much more than anything else. So now we're going to add the lanyard that we made out of the jersey hemp as well. So I have my Dritz turner. I've put 2 of my wooden pony beads on the turner. I did clean out the little wood shavings in there to make sure it's nice and smooth. And then I'm just going to take the mask, and I am going to just run my 24-inch piece of jersey through both backs of the ear loop. Not the front, but the back, because after they adjust this, this is not even close to their ears. It is the adjustment part, so it is the loop that's behind the bead. And then I am going to grab the end tail of that, and I'm going to very carefully, because of the wood, I might leave that little flippy hook thing down, and I'm going to put both beads on. And now I am going to take my turner up through both beads, and this is a little tricky. It gets a little tricky here because of the thickness. And if you have any trouble, this is what I'm going to recommend. I'm going to say to take your jersey strip and cut it on a diagonal, and that will take away a little bit of the bulk when you're doing this. So I've cut that on a diagonal, And I'm going to, sounds like my husband has arrived home. So if there's any background noise, I apologize. But that helps me get that tie right through. And again, I cut these ties at 5/8 of an inch with the jersey hemp knit that I'm recommending. And there you go. We have just completed making an eco-friendly face mask with a gorgeous print on the front side and the hemp on the inside. That will, organic cotton hemp on the inside, that will protect you if you have any skin sensitivities. And then the lanyard keeps it close to you when you're not wearing it. You can just adjust it. It's around your neck, and it can just hang whenever you're not wearing it. And then the removable nose wire, it's just a matter of slipping it in and out. And you're going to make those nose wires with just a little bit of whatever glue is your preference, and then a gross grain ribbon. I use a few inches, and I tab it at about 1 inch. And just make sure that the adhesive is facing the inside of the mask, regardless of what side that you put the pocket on. So if the pocket's on the right side, we want the tab on the right side from the inside of the mask, and then it should just slip in there. And that ribbon will keep that wire from moving. So it will not shift or move when being worn. And then when you wash the mask, you can simply take it out and wash it. And hemp, this hemp organic cotton is so beautiful. The more that you wash it, the softer and more subtle it becomes, and it's going to last 3 times longer than an ordinary cotton mask. So you have a longer shelf life with this mask. So happy to share this with you today. I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I think that's about a wrap. And then we're going to talk a little bit about our next video. I hope that you enjoyed learning how to make our organic pleated face mask today that's safe for you and the planet and great for people with sensitive skin. If you did, be sure to give us a thumbs up, a like. We appreciate that so much. And if you need any of the links for any of the products or tools that I use today, it'll be in the description below. So just click the little arrow down here. It'll open up for you. You can see all those links. And for my sewing angels out there, thank you so much for your time today. It means so much to me. God bless. Be well. Keep sewing. It's good for the soul. Bye.